final piece of polynomials that we covered in the grade 9 course was how to divide polynomials. And this is a very important concept heading on to grade 10. So as a reminder, when we divide polynomials, you are going to divide the coefficients. So we divide the numbers. And then the second part, we're going to divide the variables. But again, we're talking about variables that are the same base. And if we have the same base and you're dividing, if you remember, you're going to subtract the exponents. So if you recall, you have the quotient law that tells you, for example, if you had like x to the power 5 divided by x to the power 3, well, the law says if the bases are the same, you are allowed to take the two exponents and subtract them. So this would clean up to be x to the power 2. Okay, so question A tells you divide each of the following. Same idea as when I talked about multiplication. Sometimes there's a bunch of different ways to say divide. So I'm going to also kind of write down the also known as part right here. So again, these would be like also known as. If you ever saw a question that said to simplify and it was set up sort of like this, so almost set up in like a fraction format, or if it had a division symbol, that obviously is going to imply that you're dividing. But then also if you ever see it worded as like find the quotient, okay, so if it says find the quotient, then you're going to be dividing. So first question, I am going to divide the numbers. So I'm going to go negative 15 divided by 5. Okay, well that's going to give me negative 3. And then by my exponent laws, so my quotient law tells me that when I have the same base, so base x, I subtract the exponents. So I would go 2 minus, don't forget, there's no number here, that implies a 1. So I go 2 minus 1. And then I would just clean it up and say that this would simplify to negative 3x. And I don't have to put to the power 1. If you do, that's fine. All right, question B. So take the numbers, divide them. 8 divided by 4 is 2. And then I'm going to look. I have an x to the power 1 on top. I have an x to the power 1 on the bottom. So I can go 1 minus 1. And then I just have this little y hanging out sort of by itself. So I have to just rewrite it. Well, if I were to clean this up, I'm going to get 2 times x to the power 0 times y. Well, don't forget, x to the power 0 is going to be equal to 1. So this would actually clean up to give you 2 times y. And just to point out, you would not have to show this piece here where you're showing the x to the power 0. I just wanted to include that since it was a review lesson in case you weren't sure sort of what happened to the x's. So if you understand that these two x's are going to just cancel out, and then you can go kind of directly to here, great. Okay, question C. So you have negative 6x plus 12, and that whole thing is over 2. So what I often show students is you can rewrite this. So I could go 6x over 2. So I can split it into two separate terms, plus 12 over 2. Okay, so that's representing the same thing. And then basically now I'm going to do what we did above. So negative 6 divided by 2 is negative 3. There's no x, so that stays. And then 12 divided by 2 is positive 6. And this would be my final answer. So sometimes when I first introduce this, I often show students that you can break it up into two separate terms, and then it might just be a little bit easier to clean up. Okay, but again, if you can go from here straight to the answer, go for it. All right, so I'm going to show splitting it up. If you don't need to, skip it. So this is like 12x squared divided by 3x minus 3x divided by 3x. Okay, so all I've done is I've taken both of these terms, rewritten them over that common denominator. And then if this is a negative, I always just put it as a subtraction symbol in between the two terms. Okay, we'll clean this up. So 12 divided by 3 is 4. And then I have x to the power 2 on top divided by x. So if you think about it, 2 minus 1, I'm going to get x to the power of 1. I don't need to write the 1. And then be careful, this is why I included this question. So technically here, the 3's would cancel out. The x's also cancel out. The common error, though, is students like to say that this is their final answer. Okay, but that is actually incorrect. Because what happens is when this all cancels out, you're actually left with 1. So this would simplify to 4x minus 1. Okay, and then the very last one, and I should point out that this has a lot more going on than technically what was required for the grade 9 course. So our focus was mostly on max to the power of 2 once it's simplified down. But to me, this is good to kind of push you a little bit. Again, I'm always trying to get you guys prepared for the next year. So I'm going to start. Split these up. 4x squared y divided by 2xy minus, there's minus here, and then 6x cubed y to the power of 5 over 2xy. Okay, start with your numbers first. 4 divided by 2 is 2. I have an x to the power of 2 on top, x to the power of 1 on the bottom. So I'm going to go 2 minus 1. I'll have 1x left. And then hopefully you'll notice there's a y on top, y on the bottom. So that's a 1 and a 1. Those are going to cancel out. So there won't be any y here. And then minus 6 divided by 2 is 3. And then I have x to the power 3 divided by x to the power 1. So I'll be left with x to the power 2 when I apply my quotient law here. And then y to the power 5 divided by y to the power 1. So 5 minus 1, I'll be left with 4 y's. So I say y to the power 4. And technically, proper notation, you should have this term first. So I'm going to write it in decreasing order of the x. Okay. One last thing I do want to point out, what's kind of nice about when you're dividing multiplying with polynomials, you can quickly double check your answer. So if I say that when I divide this, I get 4x minus 1, I could check my answer. So I could check and say, okay, well, if I have 4x minus 1, if I multiply it by 3x, right, will I get 12x squared minus 3x? Right, so this is my question. Well, we just practiced this in the last lesson. So I know that I'd have to multiply everything in the brackets by that 3x. So I'd have 4 times 3 is 12. X times x will give me x squared. And then negative 1 times 3x is negative 3x. And luckily we are good that these sides do in fact match. So it's kind of nice. You can always check your solutions when you're multiplying and dividing polynomials. So that's just a little side note. Okay, more practice. So this one's titled Polynomials 3. Same idea, try some questions, check your answers. If you get stuck, let me know. And then at the end, give me an idea how things are going. So happy face, good to go. Neutral face, so-so. Or sad face, need additional support. Have a great day.